I'm not sure it's possible for me to write a compelling intro about a retro-inspired boomer shooter anymore. In the near decade since the trend launched in the indie space, there have been so many Wolfenstein slash Doom slash Quake influenced games that I've lost track of the various ways I've spoken about them. The wave of nostalgia for mid-90s stuff has even graduated to late 90s games such as Half-Life, and we're starting to see a resurgence of early 2000s styled games. What else can I convey about these shooters that I haven't already stated? Maybe that's not the most exciting way to introduce Project Absentia, a new retro-inspired boomer shooter from developer Waffle Iron Studios, but I'm at a bit of a loss. On a surface level, it's clear to see what separates Absentia from other similarly influenced indie games. The art style is a pastiche of early Flash animation, sprite-based comics, and even some Genndy Tartakovsky minimalism. There's lots of flat shades, cartoony proportions, and low-budget charm here. Dig deeper into its mechanics, though, and I can almost reread a review I've written dozens of times before from a completely different game. That's not to say Project Absentia is a bad game. With its blistering speed and brief runtime, it's actually quite an enjoyable blast of nostalgic charm. I'm just not sure how much longer that type of game is going to work in the grand scheme of things. Project Absentia tells the story of Abby, a guardian angel who lives a rather happy life with her girlfriend Aurora. One day, the evil Orkin Corporation captures Abby, Aurora, and their friend Orion, though Abby breaks free from their imprisonment. Determined to save her friends, she wages a one-woman war against the corporation that includes Tommy-gunning foes, rocket-launching monsters, and generally destroying anything in her path. There is a smattering of cutscenes which advance the plot further, but you don't need to know much else to jump in. True to its roots, Project Absentia is much like Doom in that the general premise is mostly an excuse to get you shooting things. Truth be told, I kinda spaced out at points, but I do think the cutscenes are decently animated in a 90s Cartoon Network kinda way. There's also some solid acting from Mikkel Dover as Abby, who sorta channels a Hunter Schafer thing with her inflections. The gist of Project Absentia's gameplay takes place over 2 episodes consisting of 12 levels each, of which there may be hidden levels. I didn't find any. Each episode is broken up into different chapters, though that's mostly for story purposes. Powered by UZ Doom, the game features all of the hallmarks of that retro engine, which includes mostly square geometry, sprite-based characters, and Doom Q architecture. I can't say that I don't love these attempts at fully featured 3D spaces, though I applaud how far custom forks of the Doom engine have come over the years. While it would be easy to say gunplay is just Doom but modern, that's not quite the case. Project Absentia has a decently sized arsenal, but it throws players a curveball when it comes to carrying weapons. Abby can only hold 5 guns at a time that are broken up into categories. Her main weapon is a Tommy gun with infinite ammo, though it needs to reload after every 50 shots. Her other slots include an elemental weapon slot, a shotgun slot, an explosive slot, and a BFG slot. You can carry all of these at once, but you can only carry one type of each at a time. Curiously, this mirrors a similar system in Capcom's Pragmata, though Project Absentia was in development since before we even saw gameplay of the Sci-Fi Datathon. I think it's a pretty cool system for making the player think on their feet, not to mention forced decisions based on available ammo. If you're carrying a shotgun and have wasted some ammo, but come across another shotgun, you also don't need to worry about dropping one to replenish ammo, which helps with pushing you towards certain firearms. You could swap weapons freely too, so you're not stuck with something until you deplete ammo. It's maybe not boomer shooter coded, but I appreciate the attempt at diversity in mechanics. Those extra guns are also pretty dang cool too. During episode 1, you'll have access to a freeze gun or a plasma gun, a rocket launcher or a heat-seeking one, a double barrel or a flak cannon, and then the rather humorously named Rainbowitzer weapon. Episode 2 introduces an expander rifle, a revolver shotgun, and a potted plant that unleashes Venus flytraps as your super weapon. The Tommy gun gets some alternate ammo you could switch to that increases its damage output, though I found it to be mostly a last resort type of deal considering it's weak regardless. All of this certainly echoes the past, though the enemy roster is maybe a little lacking. The first episode features a ton of low-tier fodder enemies that are mostly reskins of one another. Similar to classic Doom, there's foes that use shotguns and Tommy guns mixed in with enemies that use rocket launchers, etc. Everything has a nice, bright, cartoony sprite, and it's easy to differentiate which foe is which in a crowd, but they aren't the most exciting or dynamic of enemies to deal with. I do appreciate the reference to Little Shop of Horrors with the Venus Flytrap mini-boss, but that's really the most memorable enemy.
Little shop of horrors, little shop of terror, oh, little shop of horrors.
Boss fights are mostly just dumping ammo into a bigger foe until their health bar ticks down. Some have different phases that activate at certain thresholds, so they aren't totally brain dead, but also not really innovative or inventive. That maybe sounds like damning praise, but I think what gives Project Absentia its edge is that combat is fast as hell. You're often up against a metric fuck ton of enemies too, so basic encounters start to resemble the slaughter maps of Doom user levels. The level design is pretty accommodating to this, with more of a build engine kind of philosophy to its layouts. Since jumping is enabled, arenas are allowed to be more vertical, and with Abby's gigantic float jump, you can clear wide gaps with ease. It's great for making more believable spaces in what is otherwise just Doom, not to mention it makes platforming not suck out loud like in older games. However, I feel everything runs together by the end. What sticks out the most for me is the soundtrack. Composed by Vexonia in Episode 1 and Malfours in Episode 2, the OST invokes comparisons to Alexander Brandon and Michiel Vandenbos's work for the original Unreal. It's heavy on techno synths, but there's a lot of ethereal tunes that work well with the larger maps and eliciting a distinct sense of atmosphere. And truthfully, that's about where I'm at with Project Absentia. I'm struggling to come up with anything else to say, positively or negatively, because the Boomer Shooter Renaissance has kind of run its course. David Szymanski, creator of Dusk, even wrote as much on social media recently. He said, "At the very least, 90s nostalgia has about run its course, for better or for worse, when talking about the pushback against nostalgic throwbacks nowadays. That doesn't mean Project Absentia is bad, but I feel it doesn't do enough to differentiate itself. Still, if you're taken by its visuals and like what I've described, I'd say the game is worth checking out. It's relatively cheap, only runs about 4 to 5 hours, and does feel nice to play. Not every game needs to reinvent the wheel to be enjoyable or good, and maybe in a decade or so, I'll look back more fondly on Project Absentia. I could see it becoming a sleeper hit."